Hey there, Cacophons. It's a fresh-faced Dan Whitell here, and there comes a time when you heed a certain call. So on the Cacophony Sessions tonight, I'm welcoming back my friend, Prince historian, Dr. Funk to the show, and we're going to talk about We Are the World, because there's been a Netflix documentary about it recently. We Are the World was recorded on January the 25th, 1985. I wasn't born yet. It's very much something that I've thought about in retrospect. What can you shed, Dr. Funk? What memories does it conjure up for you?
You had a who's who of everyone in the music industry that meant something at the time, except for two artists. We all knew it was like the inspiration of Band-Aid, which kind of like with Do They Know It's Christmas Time the previous year, November, December.
Yeah, exactly. 2 months before it was recorded.
And it was phenomenal out here, and I'm sure it was phenomenal out there. How did they get that? We should be able to have our own little version of it. And that's where I think it came, regardless of Bob Geldof being responsible for it. This one was more Quincy Jones and Lionel Richie, and then Michael Jackson. But you see the process of the documentary and whatnot. But at that time, all we know is that it took place after the American Music Awards. One of the two artists that were not there was invited, but didn't want to be there in the capacity that they wanted to. And we'll get into that later. And that scandal in itself, unfortunately. But this is all for charity and all for good. Sometimes I just focus on who was there and the things that took place. It felt like there was unnecessary drama at the time and with this documentary.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed about the documentary is that it doesn't really get into the mechanisms of it as a charity single. There's no mention of what it achieved in terms of charity or the money raised. Is very much a secondary point in the documentary. It feels like a celebration of all the people that were involved, looking back at it as a great night. The documentary is called The Greatest Night in Pop, and it's purely a celebration of that one night. But with these charity records, Band-Aid included, there's always a sense of it was a great time for pop music, but what they set out to achieve. The documentary does feel like it's sniffing its own farts. It's a bit self-congratulatory, and it doesn't really address any of the issues that caused the song to be recorded in the first place. And I wasn't so keen on that. I'm not a big fan of either We Are the World or the Band-Aid song Do They Know It's Christmas. I think that picking Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson was a weird choice. Michael Jackson would take this and go on to make his trademark savior songs. After this, we would get Man in the Mirror, which I think is a much better song. But then we would go on to get things like Heal the World, which I'm not a major fan of. And then it was diminishing returns because you end up with things like Cry in 2001. And I just think that putting him and Lionel Richie together means that you're going to get the most milquetoast song out of it. And when you look at all the other people that could have been involved in the writing process, Stevie Wonder missed it. I just think we could have ended up with a more memorable song. It's far less than the sum of its parts as a song for me.
They tried with Stevie. And honestly, at the time when it came out, there was mention of USA for Africa a lot. Famine relief. Same with Band-Aid and what Bob Geldof was trying to achieve there. Except the big scandal with Band-Aid and Do They Know It's Christmas Time is that George Michael being a part of it and knowing that no group has ever had 5 number ones in 1 year. And they felt with Last Christmas, they were going to have it. Yeah. But he knew in a part of this, it's going to prevent that from happening. That was the only scandal. And of course, he was right. It happened. But I don't know if it's just that you guys over there are a little bit more, I don't want to use the word chippy, but that you didn't have the egos so much. Maybe it's because we didn't, Geldof's got an ego. Okay.
There's a bit in the documentary where he's telling Stevie Wonder that the song should be just for people that are essentially white people buying the record, and that he doesn't care about the African people understanding the lyrics, because Stevie wanted to bring in a Swahili verse and Bob Geldof saying it's not about that. And I'm just like,
and they lost.
Who are you, Bob Geldof, to tell Stevie Wonder what to do? The guy's only really famous musically for I Don't Like Mondays in 1979, I think. And other than that, musically, he's just been the guy to get annoyed at people who don't do charity events. And it's all about ego for Bob Geldof, clearly.
You just wonder if Stevie Wonder was able to be part of the process, how much better it would have been. But remember, at that time, Stevie was getting a lot of flack for some of the songs that he was putting out at the time. I just called to say I love you. part-time
Yeah, he
love.
wasn't the only part.
You lost it. And you see the thing with the Swahili part. Maybe that would have been discussed privately in the recording process, the writing process, that they were able to reach Stevie, but we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have this other stuff. But I love the thing of Stevie was like, why didn't you guys call me? We tried.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's been the biggest scandal, but it wasn't.
Mm.
But it's just, you have all these things, and it just took Michael and Lionel so long to write it that they really weren't writing it to the last minute. At least that's what we're finding through this. And look, that's how it happens sometimes. I've written stuff before where you have to have a deadline, whether it's a song, whether it's an article. And sometimes when you're putting it together last minute, that's when the magic does happen. I'm not so certain about this time.
No.
But it's too monumental. At that time, nothing like it was ever done except for Band-Aid. And of course, the arrogance of us Americans, we could do better than them.
Yeah. Yeah, it did feel like that, especially because it was 2 months to the day after Band-Aid was recorded, and suddenly they'd had this idea. I did like how they got Harry Belafonte in, and his thought was that they should make sure that it's black singers singing for Africa, so that therefore you got a lot more black influence on it, which is not something that's on the British record at all, really. There were some black singers involved, but not lead singers.
Let's be honest about that, because if they were trying to do that, we would have had James Ingram having a bigger part. Luther Vandross would have been invited. Gladys Knight invited. Other people that were not.
Yeah, there's so many.
LaToya.
Even James Brown. James Brown, where was James Brown? I know they're not going to be invited, but I would have loved to, instead of Quincy Jones. I love Quincy Jones' production, but please give me this record produced by George Clinton and the P-Funk Collective instead. That would have been a much better record. It would have been
James would have been a better fit than Bob Dylan in how uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, he was so uncomfortable. And Stevie Wonder, essentially, this is again shown in the documentary, and I do like these bits. They're quite magical, that do show us some insight into how these artists work. There's a bit where Stevie Wonder sings Bob Dylan's bit as if he were Bob Dylan, to show Bob Dylan how he should sing his bit and sound as iconic as he does. And it's wonderful. But yeah, it shows that Bob Dylan didn't really fit on that record or in the room. I'm not the biggest Bob Dylan fan. I love him as a lyricist. And it may have been interesting to get him involved in the writing process rather than the singing process. I think they could have potentially come up with a lot better lyrics had Bob Dylan been involved in that aspect.
True. It's just the uncomfortableness. And again, like we said, you had James Brown there, George Clinton, if they were trying to make it more black centric, but they were trying to do this whole thing of what Band-Aid did. That was a mixture of people, but now you're making it this thing to where it could have been more. Like, yeah, Cyndi Lauper there, but you chose Cyndi instead of Madonna. You couldn't have both because you didn't think Madonna could sing. But Huey Lewis nailed that solo. That's another thing. And we'll get into that because of who Huey Lewis replaced. But you had all these great pop stars at the time. And yes, at the forefront that night, everyone was huge and hot. You didn't have Eddie Murphy there, but you had Dan Aykroyd, Midler, Rick James, these other things that they folded because they were trying to make it so pop centric.
There's no Shaka Khan. There's no Donna Summer. These are artists that could have been on that record easily. But the one thing I will say, We Are the World, I'm not really a fan of either song, as I said, but I do think that the We Are the World, it holds up a little bit better than the Band-Aid lineup, because in Do They Know It's Christmas, I think it's opened by Paul Young, and Paul Young was an English singer who had a few hits, but nobody recognizes him anymore. And there's a few people in there that you just go, oh, I don't quite know who they are. Whereas the American one, everyone is a big star. All the pieces do fit. All the vocal lines that are used are great. There's phenomenal vocal performances on it. Kenny Loggins into Steve Perry, that's just great. You don't really have anything of that on the English record for me. Lyrically, I think both songs are all over the place. It's always bugged me that the chorus ends with the rhyme being you and me on We Are the World and not you and I, because that rhymes with the previous line. I always thought there's a strange choice, but it's still not as bad as the Band-Aid one where they're talking about there won't be snow in Africa, where Kilimanjaro for a start, that has a lot of snow on it all year round. no rain or rivers flow as a rainy season and the River Nile in Africa. I think somehow the American one has ended up with less clunky lyrics, but they're still not great.
I'm sure the UK one didn't have to have a sign at the door that said check your egos at the door, though.
No, that's true.
Egos were not checked that night. So that's a
No.
problem.
And I think the main one may have been Quincy Jones in terms of his ego needed to be checked at the door as well, but may not have been. And I'm not going to speak ill of Quincy Jones because he's an incredible producer. But there just seemed to be a little bit of attitude from him in some of the interviews. Maybe he was tired, or some of the things that he said post recording over the years led me to think that maybe he exacerbated some of the issues. But that's just my 2 cents.
It's interesting because Quincy only did it through a phone call. I don't know, contributing to this documentary of We Are the World, the greatest night in pop music or what.
Yeah, he's not one of the talking heads now.
Probably a good thing for a lot of reasons. Don't know if it's because of health. Don't know if it's because he was just like, oh God, we are the world again. But yeah, there was some ego playing happening for sure. Lionel as well, and we'll get into that, is you can, just like with it, you don't want to be critical of Quincy, but if you love someone or these other things, you got to critique them in certain ways. I'm thankful Prince allowed me into his orbit, and I was working with a bunch of different artists through promotion, through other things. So I'm thankful that he allowed me to be critical. I'm hoping people like Quincy or Lionel, they would allow some criticism too at that time. I'm not so certain about it, or maybe we wouldn't have got that video for Dancing on the Ceiling if someone would have really told Lionel Richie what they think. But
oh God, if you've just given me flashbacks. Oh, I hate that video so much and that song.
Yeah, that's going to be in your head all night. You're welcome.
Yeah, that's bad. Thanks.
But it did do a lot at the time. What raised 85 million for USA for Africa. Now that with inflation now, that'd be close to 200 million. But did it really fully help? Like, especially when we're giving billions to wars and other things instead of the homeless problem here and still what's going on in Africa. It's quite sad, to be honest.
Yeah, we have a similar thing over here. We do comic relief every year, and lots of money gets raised for Africa every year. And there's usually celebrity involvement, and it's very much in the same spirit as the likes of Band-Aid and We Are the World. But it always feels like the money is just dumped somewhere, and there's not really any thought into how it can actually help the people that you're supposed to be helping. So for me, ultimately, it makes the song feel like a bit of an ego exercise rather than something that is going to bring about structural change and actually change the world. It feels more like, as I say, the documentary, it feels a bit too self-congratulatory for me without actually going into the reason why the song was made. There's nothing covered in any of the kind of Ethiopia famine or anything like that. Even Band-Aid's music video had a thing that was narrated by a guy called Michael Burke, and it was just explaining the situation. There wasn't really any of that from what I can see on the We Are the World promo stuff. It was just more about the song. But I might be wrong. As I say, I wasn't born at the time, so I can't be privy to everything that was put out.
It was just nuts because, to be honest, it did get a lot of attention. But at the same time, it got almost as much attention as the person that wasn't there.
Yeah, it was a bit of a talking point.
But then you're focused on, and in this documentary, because at the time, like Prince, that's who we're talking about here. Not Madonna. Yeah. They didn't want to be involved in it, but the other person who they wanted to be involved. And again, at that time, him not showing up to We Are the World and what happened that night with his bodyguards and photographers.
Yeah, he got into a bit of a scuffle, didn't he?
When the Grammys were coming up afterwards, and we'll touch base, it's like now it was, here it is, Prince is being nominated for so and so many Grammys. The artist who didn't show up to the We Are the World recording and had his photographers, the photography incident, every single time something came up with him for the next couple of years because he didn't do interviews and because how the press was at that time. That's all they talked about. So let's get into that to the point of where Quincy and Lionel and Michael were wanting Prince there and putting him right next to Michael. while
Yeah.
other artists were able to get solos. It was me, Michael and Prince sharing a microphone. And look, people try to have these Michael Jackson and Prince comparisons. It's not fair because Michael was in the industry at that time for at least 15, 16 years. He had
Yeah.
more than Prince with the Jacksons, the Jackson 5, all these different things. So always putting them head to head. I don't think Michael really appreciated that. And that's another
Yeah.
thing to go on is at that time, that night of 1985, end of January, Prince was more popular than Michael Jackson at that time. So all the Michael fans are going to be upset in the comments. At that time, he was bigger. Okay. Number one movie, number one soundtrack, number one single, 6 months dominating the charts. Thriller won 7 Grammys. Purple Rain didn't. Okay. You guys won. Let it be. We're just going on to this is that I feel that Quincy and Lionel and Michael to some extent, although I think they egged it on, they didn't like and didn't understand how popular Purple Rain was. Then now it's becoming this iconic movie. Although they didn't like the way it was filmed, they didn't like how he was toward women. And I think and this is my assumption on this, of course, I did research later on to find out everything I'm about to say is true. Lionel and Quincy didn't exactly like how Prince wasn't playing the game, so to speak, that they had to do things in their career to be safe, to go the road, more travel than Prince was doing, which was less travel. And they didn't appreciate that. They didn't like that. So it's like how in that Prince movie, which not a lot of people saw, but we'll go into this year of Under the Cherry Moon and where Christopher Tracy, Prince's character, and Jerome Benton, Tricky, were like, we're going to bring it down to our world. And they're talking about Mary. I feel with seeing Lionel, they're trying to bring Prince down to their world and put him in his place. Yeah. You're going to stand next to Michael. And I'm not even talking about height difference or any of these other things. We're putting you next to him. We're going to do this. The problem with that is, and Quincy was aware, there's a video going around that's from 87, 88, where Quincy talks about Prince's recording process, that he has engineers set things up and then they leave, or he'll be with the artist, he'll record himself.
From what I understand, I know a lot of people that work with Prince. He lets the engineers set up the board and everything else. He tells the engineer to disappear, and he stays in with the artist, with his overdubbing or whatever. And I think that's great. It's a highly personal form of creativity, but it may be putting a little bit too much on your shoulder to try to make all of those decisions yourself.
So a person at that time that doesn't even record with his own band, records everything in his home studio or at Sunset Sound by himself. You're going to put him in a room with 40 other people, not including the cameramen, not including the producers, not including the engineers behind the desk. You're going to put him in that knowing that he only records by himself. And then he's trying to make it work. He offers a guitar part. They're like, no. And the whole check your ego at the door thing. Maybe Prince should have called again, because obviously when Bob Dylan needed a little bit of alone time to work with Steve, and we talked about earlier how uncomfortable Bob Dylan looked.
Yeah.
Just imagine 1,000 times intensified if Prince was there, how it would look and how it'd be doing. And I think they were doing it on purpose. They knew Prince was black, like Lionel, like Quincy, like Michael, but he was, as my friend Scott Wood said, and I wish I brought the book to have in front of me, Prince and Little Weird Black Boys. He was different, and they were going to let him and remind him of that. I don't know how you felt with it, but growing up with an 85, he got slammed and ridiculed. How they come for Kanye for anti-Semitic rants. You thought Prince was doing that in 1985. It was terrible the way he was treated.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of buzz on X in the last week, mainly Michael Jackson fans and Prince fans just at loggerheads a little bit. I've always got the sense that it was a good choice. I always think that Prince not doing it was the best thing that he could have done, because it created that little bit of controversy and still kept him as an outsider. And if he had done the song, I don't think it would have worked, especially with the line that they put him in. Now, all the lines were arranged by Tom Baylor, and each line was designed to be sung in a particular style according to the artist that was going to sing it. Now, I don't know about you, but how could you write a template for how you think Prince would deliver a line? Because I think with all the other artists you can, but with Prince, he could sing it in falsetto. He could sing it in his chest voice. He could almost do it as like a spoken word rap thing that he would tend to do sometimes. For instance, that very year, you've got The Ladder that comes out from Around the World in a Day, which I'm repping for today. Yeah, you've got The Ladder, and most of that is delivered like a spoken word kind of thing. So he was very versatile, perhaps far more so than a lot of the other pop singers that were there. So I think instantly you're going to have a moment where Tom Baylor says to Prince, "Oh, if you sing it like this," Prince is going to say, "I don't want to sing it like that." And then if he had been there, I think it would have caused more issues. And I think you would have seen egos clash. And I don't think Prince comes out of it looking as good as he does. I know he didn't come out of it looking good, but he wasn't there. There were no words exchanged. He didn't say anything bad about anybody. And he kept himself to himself a little bit, as much as he could. He did court the controversy a little bit, but I ultimately think it was the best decision for him to make. And I think his logic stands up. I think that, yeah, it didn't really help people, and there were people starving at home, which is what he said at the time. And he tried to contribute a guitar part, so he was up for working with them. And I just don't think that he is an artist that we never, even in all these years since, we've never really seen him in that environment. We never saw him collaborate with multi-track songs or for big charity occasions. That wasn't his style. And I think he was wise to stay away from it. And it might have cost him some like cool points with the other people in the industry. But you know what? Prince didn't need that. He never needed it.
About 19 years later, at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with Tom Petty and everyone on stage.
That's the closest we got, yeah.
Play guitar. He didn't sing. That's all he wanted to do was play his guitar, because that's how Prince was instead of that. Now, look, let's be honest here. Prince had a huge night at the American Music Awards. That was his coming out party, so to speak. He wanted to go out and celebrate. Bob Cavallo and other people were telling him, stay your ass in. And he couldn't listen. He went out a couple of times that night. It wasn't just once. He was going out a little bit. The award show recorded at 5 p.m. I think his performance was between 7 and 8. After 8, you're in LA, you're on top of the world. You're like, where are we going to now? But you're being told to stay. If you're not going to go to this recording session, stay in. Now, not doing that, and then him showing up at a place, regardless of the photographers opening up the limo and taking photos of him, whoever he was with at that night. And we will discuss that at another time. But the photographers, the bodyguards, they did what they always do, but they roughed him up a little bit more this time, had to chase after the guy and take the film out. So assault battery charges are done. Prince isn't in charge of the assault battery, but his security guards are. And as we said, on bodyguards, we call them my friends. Now you have this sense of they find out and the press has a field day with it. And I just feel there's a little bit of Quincy and Lionel like, serves that mofo right. They want to show up this instead. If maybe he would have just stayed at home, I still think that they would have made this thing that Prince is the enemy, that he didn't want to be a part of it. Now, look, we didn't get the guitar part. He said he'd write a song for it. He did a few days later for The Tears in Your Eyes, you know.
Which is not the same version as the live version that he played at Live Aid, which is on the B-sides compilation. I think I prefer the live version, but yeah, that's not here nor there really.
But you know how it was recorded, and they're eating like old bologna. Him and Susan Rogers recording it in the back of a thing in New York, I believe. But then they redo it in the studio later on. But we get For the Tears in Your Eyes, and I really don't like that they didn't bring that up at all.
No, they didn't. I was waiting for it, but it didn't happen.
Just feel if Prince was here with us, that they wouldn't have talked about him so much. And the emphasis is that Prince is still big. He's no longer here with us, unfortunately, but he still lives over them. So they're always trying to make him look bad way. It could have just been, I'm just saying, the 20th, I didn't watch the documentary for the 20th. I guarantee you he was brought up for a minute. We invited him. He didn't show up. There's an incident that happened, blah, blah, blah. They let it go. This is brought up 4 times. Of course, Sheila E. being invited, being involved And the thing is, what people have to understand is, was it a little bit of arrogance on Sheila's part that she thought that she was going to get a verse like the other bigger named artist? Maybe. But people have to keep in mind with Sheila, she just performed the American Music Awards that night as well. She's been in the industry for a while. She's on Michael's Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, playing the bottles, doing these other things. And not only that, she toured Lionel Richie before being the opening act for the Purple Rain tour. And what people forget, and this is it, this is why it's like the old fans need to understand, you need to give knowledge to the younger fans. A lot of people may not know that Nicole Richie is not actually Lionel Richie's biological daughter. Her last name is actually Nicole Escovedo, Juan Escovedo's daughter. And he was having trouble with the woman, Karen, that he had Nicole with. They were worried that they wouldn't be able to give her the life that she wanted. Lionel met her at a Prince show with Nicole playing a tambourine on stage. Lionel adopted Nicole. And that's why Nicole says, my only dad is Lionel, because of what happened with Juan Escovedo or whatnot. But at that time, Sheila is Nicole's niece. This whole process is happening. It's not that old. So Sheila should have been invited for her connections to Lionel and others. Now, let's be honest. We all thought, some of us thought that Sheila was brought as a little, an olive branch to bring Prince there. Perhaps.
Yeah.
At the same time, she should have been invited because of her connections with Lionel and others. Again, grandiose, what should she have gotten a verse? Probably not, but she deserved to be in that room, but not for the ulterior motives that they were doing. So
the Escovedo family are one of the most prominent percussion families in like 70s music. They were in Santana's band. So she's got lineage that goes back. She's definitely deserving of a place there, just as part of a family of musicians. I think the controversy is more surrounding the fact that she was there as Sheila E. the pop star, which was essentially another vehicle for Prince to release yet more music. I've gone back to the two albums that she had, Row 1600 and Glamorous Life. If you base her appearance on just hearing those two records, you would say, well, she's just another Prince protege. But when you actually look into her chops as a drummer and a percussionist, she's more talented than a lot of people that were actually involved in the record and had verses. So I don't think on talent that you could argue that she shouldn't deserve to be there. I just think, maybe in terms of the known singers, she can't really claim to have been one of the prominent pop stars of the 80s. Her pop career wouldn't have achieved what it did without the backing of Prince. So it did very much feel like a tokenistic invite from that perspective. But I'm not taking anything away from Sheila, because I think she's better than a lot of people that did actually perform on the record. It's just unfortunate that I think the American record buying public may not have seen that.
Now, another thing that we got from For the Tears in Your Eyes, and I think this was Prince protecting himself and Sheila, is we got the Prince and Revolution track, Hello.
My least favorite B-side from that era, but is lyrically one of the most important because it actually talks about his personal perspective on the We Are the World events. But She's Always in My Hair came out that year, and that's my favorite Prince song.
At least when I was around in 85 and whatnot, no one brought this up. And I've always wondered about it, and I was getting confirmation. That was a called Hello on purpose as a little bit like, look, nowadays when we have diss tracks, you have Nicki Minaj, you had Megan Thee Stallion going after Nicki response. The way that Prince worked, Hello, the Prince Revolution track, was it named Hello, the little bit of response to Lionel's Hello? 100% it was, I was told.
Yeah, I think now I've never put those two together before, but now that you've said that, because I actually, after I watched the documentary, I decided that I was going to go into some mid-80s albums from some of the people that appeared there. So I went and listened to some Kenny Rogers. I listened to some Kenny Loggins. I've always had a soft spot for Kenny Loggins. I really love his voice. I went into some Del Hall, John Oates, love them. And I listened to Can't Slow Down because I'd never actually listened to it the whole way through. And there were some really good singles on it, but Hello is a dirge. It's really not a good song. It's only memorable because of the music video. And yeah, I think that Prince may not have been too fond of that song either. It doesn't seem like the type of thing that would impress him. So I can see that being how he would name it, almost like a little bit of pettiness from him, almost mocking Lionel with that song title.
Like, is a fan who sees this or sees social media post about this. is that they mix in Prince Revolution's Hello, the 12-inch. Let's go there. And Hello from Lionel. So every time Prince is saying hello, you got Lionel going, hello. I know it's going to be stems, but I'd love to see work. So here's some notes that I have. And some of the notes I've been talking about when it comes to the Bodyguards that came from Wally Safford in his book, Much Love to Wally, who's no longer with us.
Rest in peace.
From Bob Cavallo, thanks to Andre Swenson, Jill Jones, Bobby Z, Ruth Azarte, other people that did not want to be named from the industry. But when it comes to Hello, I was told by Jill Jones that totally it was titled Hello on purpose as a dig at Lionel, that Prince was so passive aggressive sometimes. And then about Lionel and Quincy didn't exactly like Prince's rise to the top in 84 and his success. I go, Michael is another story. I was trying to keep Michael out of this. Michael is super competitive though. That's what people have to know. Michael wouldn't have been Michael if he wasn't that way. Okay. Sometimes that can be a positive and a negative. And this is it. In the regards to the thing I said about Quincy and Lionel looking at Prince a certain way, it's because he didn't play Felty to the old crew. They didn't like that. He wasn't trying to do music collabs with them, et cetera. So there's that. He really, truly was a loner. And again, being told everything that they said in the documentary, Prince was reaching out. He was trying to make it work. The guitar part was like his super compromise, and they shut that down. And Prince felt like it was a trap to him. And other people that talked with Prince about this later on in life, he said he was feeling manipulated that night. That Quincy and Lionel and MJ, more so I'm going to stick with Lionel and Quincy. They knew what they're doing and they were trying to manipulate Prince to be there. And he didn't appreciate that.
Lionel Richie in the documentary, it comes across as though he was very much in a position where he had to be a people pleaser for everybody that night. And he put himself about almost socially, just trying to make the whole thing work. And I think maybe in trying to ingratiate himself with Quincy Jones, he may have pushed away against the Prince idea a little bit, or set it up so that maybe he wouldn't appear as good. They would have set him up to fail.
Michael was a killer in the business.
He's a lot more true than people think that he was. Definitely.
Not to say that Prince wasn't, but there was competitiveness going on. And I do feel that Quincy really didn't like Prince. In my opinion, is there was a little bit of respect going on, very, very little. Quincy, the way, again, he knew that he didn't, the whole thing with the video that we played earlier on about Quincy saying, knowing how Prince wants to be in a studio. Now, he said other things in that interview that kind of have been circulating about Prince not being a great piano player and these other things. It's absolutely ridiculous.
I've seen that. It's nonsense.
And when they did in 1995, when they did the 10th anniversary of We Are the World, and Prince being on
one of my favorite Prince moments, when they give him the microphone and he just offers the lollipop in exchange and refuses to sing it, even though they've got him up on stage to try and make amends for not appearing. He was having none of it. And I think that was great. He doubled down. It was great.
Quincy had a press conference afterwards. Of course, press got it. I haven't seen video of it, but I remember at that time reading press in the LA Times that Quincy said he's still a prick. Look, he was on stage just to be part of it. Again, he never said he never wanted to be a part of it. He just wanted to play guitar. So this time, he stood by his thing. He didn't have a guitar in his hands, but he stood on stage with them. He wasn't going to sing it because that's not what he did before. You had Lori Morton and other people there, Tom Jones, who did it, but not him. But thank God they pulled the lollipop away from Quincy. But I also feel like, look, another thing is Prince got vilified in the press forever, and he never got his Grammy moment. Now, what I mean by that is American Music Awards, all this thing, but it was all for the Black categories. And you even see it in the freaking video footage, best Black single, best Black act, while Lionel was getting all the pop or contemporary awards. That kind of happened at the Grammys. What I mean by Prince never getting his Grammy moment, Prince did perform at the Grammy Awards that year, but never. And people always go, wait, are you tripping on this? Prince never won a Grammy on the Grammy telecast for Purple Rain, what he won for Kiss, what he won the awards for Musicology with Call My Name, what he won for Future Baby Mama. The only photos you have of Prince holding a Grammy is when he was presenting to other artists, to Alicia Keys, to Kimber and Gautier, and to Beck. He never got his own Grammy moment because of probably what happened at the American Music Awards. But that night, he was supposed to be the biggest thing in music at that time. Grammys, all he got was the Baby I'm a Star performance and being introduced by Wendy's dad. That was it. So Prince, I saw some comments like, oh, it's Prince's loss. He didn't lose anything because he lost a lot in the sense of public opinion, but he never lost himself by doing things that he didn't feel were true or sincere. Just as much hunger here at home. That's being a little bit blasé about it, because what was going on in Africa at that time was absolutely horrendous, and what's still going on there is absolutely horrendous. What's happening overseas with you, what's happening over here is absolutely disgusting. The homeless problem, it's just so sad. We have billions of dollars to give to war. It's absolutely ridiculous. But he had to pay the price to never lose sight of himself. And if people want to say that was his loss or it's to his detriment that he wasn't there, like the Bob Geldof quote that was not shown in this documentary, that'll be forever to Prince's shame for not being there. Some messed up comments. And again, the person isn't here to defend himself, but yet you decided to make him a focal point 3 to 4 times during the documentary when he's no longer here, instead of focusing on the people that were there. Maybe Hugo Lewis should have got more time. Why wasn't Bob Dylan part of this documentary? Probably because he wishes he never went that night to begin with.
Yeah. It would have been interesting if Prince had shown up, because like him and Bob Dylan could have just been the Minneapolis guys just being really anxious in the corner. That would have been interesting to see how they would have bonded over that.
I mean, it was a Minneapolis thing, but yeah. And here's the thing. Do you ever think something like this will ever happen again? Lizzo?
Well, it has, hasn't it? Because they did the Haiti version in 2011 of We Are the World, and Band Aid has been done. So there was Band Aid 2 with such great acts as Sonia and Cliff Richard. It's woeful. Then it was brought back again in 2004 when they did Band Aid 20, which had, they updated it with a rap from Dizzy Rascal, which I love Dizzy Rascal, but it didn't fit that song whatsoever. It just felt shoehorned in. So they've tried these songs multiple times.
Contemporary artists now, though, Lizzo, Swift, Beyoncé.
Yeah, I don't think it would work, because it's very different now. Because everybody's so accessible through social media, people do communicate more. So it wouldn't be so peculiar to see all these stars in a room, because they probably wouldn't do it in one room for a start. It would be done remotely, I think. I think people would record their vocals in different parts of the country, all over the world. So you could do it from a technological perspective, but it just wouldn't have the same impact and history behind it, I don't think. And I think that pop culture as well, because it's so spread thin now, you've got different niches of different genres. It's very hard to say, right. So, because I think there's 40 artists in total on We Are the World. It'd be almost impossible to pick 40 artists now that you could say, this is what they would sound like on a line. This is what they would sound like on a line, because everything's so spread thin. You've got different people doing different genres and becoming experts within their respective genre. But pop music is also rap. It's also reggaeton now. Dance music. I don't think they could. I don't think they could do it now and have it be so I didn't even like the original, but I think it would be more cohesive than what they could make now.
The footage was pretty amazing, though, that they had all this. Michael footage is amazing. He controlled everything, though. We see Kenny Rogers going into that sandwich from Roscoe's. We don't see Mike at all. Just saying things were controlled. But I like seeing footage of Michael. Prince is always going to be my guy and these other things, but I can always appreciate other artists. And to me, there was no real competition. Again, Quincy reaching out for Michael for Prince and Michael to do together these different things.
The story's never the same, is it? It changes every time from Quincy, that story of why bad never happened.
And then that he says that Camille was the Michael, when we all know that Camille is a female alter ego. And there's people that are close to Quincy that could correct him and don't. And see, this whole thing about being a historian, whether it's Prince or music in general, when I'm bringing different information, like to make sure I get confirmation of hello, instead of making assumptions, I go to the people that were there and see it. Then sometimes there'll be things that I believe that aren't accurate. And I may have said in the past, you have to be able to adapt and take that in. What I thought was true is no longer true. When it came to the Quincy and Lionel stuff, I found a lot of confirmation of what I believed. And I felt a little bit more confident because me going after Lionel and Quincy, who are legends in this industry, but for what I felt was like a slight. And like I said, Prince being that little weird black boy, even though they're all black, to get confirmation from other people about that, I felt more comfortable. This is it, is if you have these things that are brought in, just because someone's been saying their story for 20 plus years, 40 plus years, doesn't mean accurate. It just means they're committed to the story. I'd rather have someone, when their new information is brought up, they adapt, they change it, they right the wrong, so to speak. But seeing the footage, I wish there was more stuff. I love seeing footage of Michael and Madonna out of pocket, out of different things. But to have all these artists together, it just is like mind boggling. Of course, it seems like weird in a bad Saturday Night Live skit all at once.
Yeah, I didn't think of it like that. It is very much like a Saturday Night Live skit before they became so ubiquitous. The way the monologue is formed now, it all feels very forced. People forced into doing things that they wouldn't. Yeah, it very much feels like that. It's got that vibe to it.
The greatest night in pop music.
Is it?
I heard about that.
I was thinking about this the other day. What if I had a time machine? When would I go back? What night? And I think I decided on Prince's final appearance at Rock in Rio 2 in 91, because that lineup is insane. I had a day which was full of Brazilian metal like Sepultura and things like that, which is something that I actually dig.
I don't know. I would like to travel more than just to one night, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
To me, we talked about this before, and it's 100% true. There was the big three in the 80s. You had Michael, you had Madonna, you had Prince. And if there could have been a fourth, of course, his not being able to come to terms with his own sexuality in the public eye and felt he was deceiving them, George Michael would have been the fourth. And if Lionel would have had more pop hits in the 80s and early 90s, he could have been the fourth or fifth if we would have included George Michael. But George Michael never became the fourth. It was always the big three. He was on the cusp. Wham had a ton of hits. And then the George Michael Faith album just blew everything out of the water. Like he was Grammy's favorite son. And then he literally turned his back on the industry with Listen Without Prejudice. And that hurt.
Which is my favorite George Michael record.
This whole thing is the greatest night in pop music. That just shows the American arrogance. And yes, I am American. I try not to have an ego. Unfortunately, the business that I'm involved in, there's a lot of politicking behind the scenes. And then when it comes to the Prince world, a lot of purple politicking behind the scenes. And it's very disheartening, but you have to keep going and keep doing stuff because you can't let other things stop you. And that was it with Prince. He could have packed up his bags. Oh no, this whole thing, We Are the World. Oh my God, it shamed me. And he made two great songs out of it, For the Tears in Your Eyes and Hello.
Yeah.
But I just feel that I just wish that it would have just focused on that night instead of who wasn't there. Cause I had to live with this in the 80s of how much he was raked through the coals for this. And now to have it happen on social media, oh, he was wrong. He was this. Like, look, he tried to make it work. Let's just be honest with that. He didn't show up, but he tried to the best of his ability. And it probably would have been, as we talked about before, the way Bob Dylan, how uncomfortable he was, Prince would have been to the ninth power. Does that really help out any?
I'm just thinking, how much do you think that this situation with We Are the World and all the negative press that he got around it, how much do you think he carried of that into the making of Under the Cherry Moon? Do you think that's why it's such a strange film and that it eschews all the 80s blockbuster standards that he could have made another Purple Rain. He could have made Purple Rain 2. Yeah. But instead, he wanted to make a film that was very much in his world. He doesn't care what's popular. He's just going to do an old comedy that people aren't familiar with, that's not in style. And there's even that bit with the photographer where they beat the photographer up outside the party when they show up with the ghetto blaster. And there's just little bits in it that make me think, I think he may have been affected by it a little bit more than just hello and a couple of references.
It hurt. I never want to speak for
Mm.
Prince. I never want to make these assumptions. Other people are so easy to do it. Again, before I even do this interview, I got to talk with 10 people because I want to make sure stuff is right to show respect. Now, I think he was hurt by it. I think, as we saw during the filming of Under the Tree, when they were over there, he did an interview with MTV. Actually, it was Stephen Fargnoli who was interviewing him. Of course, the other version that aired, you hear a woman's voice that was overdubbing Stephen, but Stephen was the one that asked the questions. That's what's funny is when there's one question that goes on too long, he's botched that one.
Mm-hmm.
But that was on the set. That's right before they're going to do anything. I think he wanted to get out of the way, so it wasn't on his mind. And he just said, they're true that he would clam up in front of so much talent in that room. I think he was being legit. He wasn't just saying. And we'll think of him saying it's coming from the Avant Purple. I think one of the reasons for the press conference is again, that was 6 months later now, 7 months later. And it was still what everyone was talking about. It was this dark cloud over him and he didn't like it. And he wanted to control the interview. So here was the manager that was closest to him, Steven, was the one doing the interview. And he tried to address it. He tried to do other things so he was hoping if I discuss it, if I do it, maybe not only will they move on, but I myself can move on, concentrate on this film. There and other things that I feel more so, say the Party Man video and the photography and like how he screws with them with the mirror.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the whole thing with Bubbles.
And the psych and the banana. Yeah.
I think that has more to do with it. I don't know, like Under the Tree, with everything you're going to have photographers, you're going to have different things in it. But I think that was more of it. But I think it's something that after that night, he felt unless he's having a photo shoot, you don't really want you taking photos of me, but he would know. You would see him at the American Music Awards in 1986, which is ironic because you had Huey Lewis take his part in We Are the World. Then the next time we did the American Music Awards, he was dressed up as Christopher Tracy, people that know at the time with the tux. And who won that award for Best Pop Duo or Group? Huey Lewis. So here it is, Prince, the person that replaced him, awarding him with some stuff. There would be more photos of Prince around that time in LA that I'd have. A lot of it, he purchased back the photos, the photography. So stuff in Under the Tree, stuff getting in the limo, those things are hard to find. And then there'd be certain outfits you'd see with Stephen Fargnoli with him. But I feel to your extent, We Are Citizens Under the Tree is after that day, he was no longer a fan of the photography, but later on in life, he became smarter in how to do it, especially when social media became more advanced and everyone was able to get photos of him, whether riding a bike or not. Sorry to be so long-winded with the answer, but that's how. But I had fun doing this, man.
Yeah, it's great fun. We should do it more often.
Yes. And as I said, for other projects coming, I mean, we got the 4th anniversary of Purple Rain. We have so many other things going on, but
I will say though that I don't like musicals. There's just one thing I can't get on board with. So even the Purple Rain musical, I'm like, nah, I'm not interested in that.
Okay. We'll see what transpires with that Broadway. We will see what transpires. We're looking at maybe 2025 or later before that comes out anyway. But 80s nostalgia is big. For what I hear, though, they're trying to make it more current. So it'd be like canceled for doing Darling Nikki and slut shaming Apollonia. That's the rumors going around. Don't know if it's true. We will see. Whispers and echoes, as we call it. What's going to be real. But what I know is real is I had a good time doing this and discussing these things and dropping knowledge in people to see a different perspective of stuff where other people like Prince were not able to defend themselves in this documentary. And I have a problem with that. I'm sure a lot of people are connected with them. And look, don't get caught in that social media stuff. If someone has their opinion of, oh, it's forever due to shame, they probably got 50 followers and 10 of them are family members, for God's sake. Don't get so much weight. I post something and I'll see other Prince people, oh, they're not going to touch it. And I just say this, let people be critical. You let them get it out there. You can move on to the next, the stuff that's more important. Do not bring that energy in. Because oh no, I don't want to be a part of it. You're already playing the game because you can't divide from what's real and what's not. It's out there. Let it be out there. You can choose not to discuss it. If other people are discussing it and you're choosing not to, they've already won because now
Mm.
you're here to discuss it.
Yeah. These things they happened in the past. Nothing's going to change the material conditions surrounding what went on. And so we are essentially now historians, making sure that accuracy is encouraged and critical thinking is used, but also just people don't need to be so angry about things that happened to their favorite artists a long time ago. There is no competition between Michael Jackson and Prince anymore.
No.
So people can just chill on that one.
And again, they were different. And Michael's industry years before Prince was. If you want to compare their solo stuff, even that's it. And look, was there a little bit of stuff going on? Look, there was competition going on, whether they say it or not, but it was friendly competition. I think Michael and Prince, when Michael passed away, Prince was devastated.
Yeah.
Like, I always thought that they were really going to work together again in the future. And that's not no one's telling me that crap, but it hurt him. He was planning on doing a concert that night when Michael passed, and he canceled it, sent everyone back home, and he sat in Paisley by himself for days. It affected him. And some fans that were Michael fans and Prince fans, they were so upset that Prince didn't comment on his passing. I reached out to him to see if he wanted to have any quotes for the website. He didn't. People grieve differently. And I wish that people would have understood that then and stop with the competition. They are true, great. One is entertainer, one is a musician, but they're some of the greatest Black performers of all time. And I'm so tired. I also feel, like I said, with Lionel and Quincy trying to drag Prince down, it's like what happened with MC Hammer in the late 80s, early 90s, where everyone like, oh, he samples music. Oh, he dances around and it's music now. And then you see it before. You have Snoop, all these legends, they sample stuff. Like they even that MC Hammer was vilified for the wrong reasons. He went away for a bit. He did his own thing. Prince never went away. And I think some people were pissed about that. And I'm glad he didn't. But stop pitting them against each other. You're able to enjoy them. They're no longer here, unfortunately. Let's have Prince and MJ parties. No Prince versus MJ. Let's have these other things. I know the Michael fans love this footage, and I loved it too. Like I said, I thought it was a little bit cheesy. I felt they shouldn't have had so much attention on someone who wasn't there. I would have loved more Michael. That's all it comes down to. Stop with this pitting them against each other, though.
Yeah, it's unnecessary. We're past that now. And I think ultimately I wanted to make this video just so we could get our thoughts out there, but also make sure we got some correct Prince information out there for people to make sure that they're aware of both sides of the story. Because I don't think that The Greatest Night in Pop is particularly good at accounting for both sides of that story.
There's three sides to the story always. Yours, mine, and the truth. And somewhere in between is where you'll find the middle ground.
Yes. And I think with things like this, we'll never know the truth. It's always going to be just one version of it, maybe a couple of versions of it, but it will never be known.
The truth is that the 80s was great with music. I love music altogether. Millennials they're the most ones in nostalgia because the music they have right now just isn't there. They don't listen to radio stations. So they find stuff, albeit not universal music stuff right now on TikTok. They find this older music and gravitate towards it. So we're having more nostalgia than we ever had. When I grew up, we were like, oh yeah, it's about the 60s and the 70s. We're like, no, man, the 80s are cool, dude. Then with the 90s, is like, man, that's the hot stuff right there. BBD and the overalls, Dewey Baby.
Oh yeah,
See,
big fan of the New Jack Swing.
But now we're having this to where stuff is being revisited. And this is what makes The Greatest Night in Pop Music such an interesting documentary because it's facing on nostalgia and not only just the 30th anniversary. Just imagine if there was something done in the 80s that was a thing to 1958, 1959. Unless it was Elvis, no one really was going to give a damn. Let's be honest. Elvis, Richard, Sinatra, Q being involved at that point, Ray Charles, perhaps. But not to this extent. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. To quote Prince, if everybody told the truth, we'd all change bank accounts and move to Neptune. So we'll never get there, but we can just make sure that the conversation is provided with the right level of detail. I think that's our responsibility.
Change bank accounts. After $1 billion lotto win kicks in. No, I'm playing. Friend, it's a pleasure talking with you and doing these things. And thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate it. Make sure you guys subscribe
Yeah. Dr. Folk Podcast, Cacophony Sessions.
Yep.
Stay funky.
Keep it funky. Thank you, Prince. Much love and keep it funky.